Good morning. This is Ian at OutBack Power, and we just started the broadcast for the AC Coupling Bundle webinar. Let me make sure that I'm sharing the correct screen here. We want to be sharing this window. All right, so we'll mostly be on the OutBack website today, and I'd like to start off by saying thanks for taking some time out of your morning to learn about our new packages, the AC Coupling bundles that are just recently released and will be on the next price list. And we have some promotional materials and information for these bundles today. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes to join here. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and send them on over or type them into your box. You'll also find a handout if you go to the handout section of the GoToWebinar interface there on your computer. There's a handout with a flyer about these products. So feel free to take a look at that while we're waiting for everybody to join. We'll just give everybody a couple more minutes here. We still have people joining moment to moment here, so we'll just wait one more minute and then we'll get going. But it looks like we have a pretty good group on here so far. Hope everybody can hear me. And I want to start out by posing a question for you all. So we'll go ahead and start with this question. Let me launch this guy. So basically, just have you ever installed an AC coupled system with energy storage? Curious how many folks on here have done one, and I know there are various types of AC coupling, but I'm curious just in general, if you've installed an AC coupled system with batteries, please respond. All right, we're getting some answers coming in here. Look at that. It's right about 50-50. Oh, now the no's have it. I don't know if you guys can see this in live, in real time, but at first we had more yeses. Now we're right about 50-50, and we're getting up to, we still have some people left to vote. If you haven't voted, please throw your hat in the ring there. All right, at 1 minute we'll go ahead and call it good. We're getting up there to 10 seconds left. And that's interesting. So look at that. We have 52% of folks on the call on the webinar have not installed AC coupling, and 48% have. That's good to know. I think that's going to be higher than the industry average for folks that are interested in OutBack, that have been installing OutBack or know about OutBack Power and other energy storage technologies. That's going to be higher than most. I think industry average is probably much lower than 50-50 for installers that have done AC coupling. But that almost certainly will change as we go into the new sort of era of solar energy, residential and commercial solar energy. The I don't have any easy way of seeing where everybody is calling in from on this webinar, but we already know that out here on the West Coast in California, the utilities have started doing the scheduled blackouts. So that's I think we'll certainly see some demand for AC coupling resulting from those. In general, utilities trying to adjust net metering programs and feed-in tariff programs. Those are going to probably drive demand for AC coupling for folks that have installed grid-tied systems, are close to that payback period. Maybe their system already paid itself off, and now they want to maximize that return on investment long term by adding some energy storage. It'll also, I think, happen. We'll see demand in areas that are affected by disasters, things like hurricanes and flooding, where the power grid goes down for days at a time. They want to have that backup option. So maybe we'll have some runtime batteries in there, or if they want to have if they want to do some energy arbitrage as the markets evolve, then you could have some more high cycle life batteries in there. So I think there's a lot of applications for AC coupling, and we've done a lot of presentations on web trainings on AC coupling as a technology and as a new feature for the Radian. So we're not going to go deep into today. We only have 30 minutes, so we're not going to go deep into all of the benefits of AC coupling and OutBack's advantages, but I'll briefly review them right now. And those are basically, you're going to have a list of customers, and new customer acquisition is a high cost. As we all know, acquiring new customers for solar energy is not cheap. It's time consuming, and it takes a lot of effort and focus. So when you already have a list of hundreds or thousands of customers to go back to and say, hey, we have this new feature with a brand that is recognized and trusted throughout the U.S. and throughout the Americas as a whole, then you immediately lower that barrier to another channel for sales. That being, because these packages, for example, are actually pretty affordable. They're in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, depending on the size of the bundle. So when you go back and you say, that's not including, to be clear, that's not including energy storage. So that does not include the batteries. But when you go back and say, hey, just for the cost of the size of the battery bank that you want and an inverter, essentially just the inverter, you can have that peace of mind that comes with battery backup, or you could have that increased return on investment by energy arbitrage or load shifting to lower cost times of day. So there's a huge incentive for installers to look into this technology and understand how it works. And for the folks that are joining now, we did a poll. We had some folks join since we did this poll just a bit ago, where we asked whether you've installed an AC coupled system with energy storage or not, and it came out to about 50-50, which I think is a pretty interesting result. So thank you everybody for voting on that. And with that, we'll jump right into these bundles specifically. I think this particular webinar is geared towards folks that will be stocking and or selling OutBack products, or considering purchasing OutBack products for the first time, maybe. That they were waiting for us to release an AC coupling feature before they wanted to consider using our products, because traditionally maybe you've done grid-tied systems and now you want to go back to those customers and try to monetize their demand for energy storage. I think it's a huge topic, and it's a huge opportunity for all of us in the industry. So this is the web page, and you would find this underneath our System Edge packages. So pre-bundled solutions, typically all we've had here is System Edge, and those, I want to be really clear up front. So these contain energy storage. These packages come with batteries. So they're going to be, in the $10,000 to $20,000 range with all of the energy storage and the charge controllers, or the Skybox. So that's, top to bottom, the whole system. Whereas AC coupling bundles are very much focused on the inverter, on the Radian itself and the accessories, just to make it as easy as possible for the end customer, the property owner, to understand what it is they're buying. So there's really only three components here, three major components, and even one of them, this little guy, is sort of optional, and we'll get right into that. in a second here. So the model numbers that are going to be available through OutBack's order entry, through your traditional purchasing channels, distributors, our order entry team here are shown up here. It's basically the Radian model number with a dash AC at the end to indicate AC coupling. Pretty straightforward. And let's see. I just noticed we have a couple questions coming in. Let me see if I can. All right. So yeah, Tylen Ogula asked a question that I should have really addressed right at the beginning. The E-model Radians, the 230 volt Radians, we do not currently have an AC coupling firmware released for those. It may come in the future, but this webinar focuses on the 120, 240 volt. So if you are in a 230 volt area, feel free to stay on and listen in about what this feature does and how we're packaging it. But otherwise, if it's something that you need right away, this feature is not available on 230 volt models as of today. So thanks for that question, Tyler. All right, coming back to so those are model numbers, and basically the highlights are we have that frequency shifting. The frequency watt shifting is sort of the full name of this feature nowadays, and that gives us complete control of the grid-tied inverters output. That's grid-tied inverters that are going to be, they have to have that feature built in. So almost all UL1741 SA inverters will have that feature, but make sure to understand which inverters, and I'm not going to go into exactly what brands we recommend today. That's in the AC coupling information underneath it's actually all linked here now. So we put all of the AC coupling information that you would want down here in the downloads. So you can learn more about what inverters and what sizes we recommend in there. We have the best voltage and current protection for all types of batteries. So OutBack, we're known for taking care of your batteries and being pretty battery agnostic. So if you're already selling a particular type of batteries, we hope it's energy cell, but the Radian, of course, can handle pretty much any common energy storage type battery application on the market, including lithium-ion. The best protection and control for when you need a backup generator. OutBack's also known for having really robust generator integration capabilities, especially with the Radian. And that's still the case in this with this new feature. And of course, OutBack power service and support. So the way we're positioning this new feature really comes with recent news, especially in California, about scheduled utility outages, as well as increasing numbers of blackouts due to natural disasters and just strain on the electrical grid in general. I think, a lot of countries are struggling with, I don't know if anybody saw that news, but Argentina just had a blackout that affected tens of millions of customers, and they believe it was due to heavy rains. And I think that, we're not, North America and Mexico and our markets are not immune to these kind of challenges. And we'll see huge opportunities as people decide that they need some resilience beyond the traditional utility grid. So another nice thing about AC coupling is when folks have already invested, your customers may have started purchasing grid-tied solar systems 5-10 years ago, and they've made their money back and maybe more. They've already started profiting off of the system, and they see the value in solar, and they see an opportunity to increase that return on investment, or maybe use that return on investment to increase their peace of mind as far as energy security goes. So it's a perfect time, I think 2019, 2020 is the perfect time to take those grid-tied systems and tap into the flexibility and freedom of battery backup. So let's take a look at the flyer that we designed for these bundles. This is the bundle-specific flyer. We have a separate flyer just for the AC coupling feature, but this bundle is pretty useful for end users to understand what it is AC coupling does. So, we want to start with why use AC coupling here and our OutBack advantages here. The bundle, basically there's two versions. You got your 4 kilowatt version and your 8 kilowatt version. The 4 kilowatt version will have a 4 kilowatt Radian. And Fred, I see your question. We'll get to that. We'll get to that here at the end. Thanks for asking. The 4 kilowatt version comes with 4 kilowatt Radian. This is the load center model that we're speccing. So it's a load center that comes without all of the DC PV breakers in it. It's basically just AC connection breakers, and that makes it easy to connect a grid tie inverter without any added unnecessary cost of DC components and connectors. You'll need the Mate 3S. This is an important one. The Mate 3 does not support AC coupling, so you need the Mate 3S, the most recent model. This is important in the case that you wouldn't be ordering a bundle, but just since we have folks on the line here, make sure that if you have a customer with a Radian and you want to do an AC coupled system, make sure that that Mate 3 is upgraded to a Mate 3S if it is not already, because the firmware will not work on a Mate 3. This is a new product by OutBack Power. Let me zoom in. Oh, that's funny. Hold on. Let me zoom in a little bit here. All right, there we go. This is a new product by OutBack Power. It's simply a generator protection kit, and it's very much optional. Most generators will either be advanced enough where they will have a reverse current protection built in, so that would protect them from any potential current backfeed from the grid tie inverter, or if they're a lower quality generator, their output frequency and signal, their AC signal, will not be clean enough per se, or perfect enough to replicate a grid for the grid tie inverter, and the grid tie inverter will recognize that it is not a utility grid, and it will shut itself down. What this generator kit does is it uses signal wires from the generator to open connectors between the grid tie inverter and the Radian. So what that means in as many words is, if your generator turns on, so whether that's by manual, manual switch, or if it's something that you programmed into your Radian to turn your generator on based on certain voltages or other, timers or what have you. There's many ways to control a generator with the OutBack products. No matter what, if that generator turns on, it will make sure that the grid tie inverter shuts down, so that there's no possibility of current coming from the grid tie inverter and feeding back into the generator and causing issues. So this is an optional product, but we do include it in the kit because it's very much low cost, doesn't add a lot of cost, and it's a good thing to have for customers that are concerned about that. And then you'll also get a 30 amp dual pole breaker. And this is simply an option for connecting your grid tie inverter inside of the load center, inside of the Radian's load center. If you want to connect your inverter in, say, the sub panel, the critical loads panel, the backed up loads panel, this breaker probably won't work for you because it's a panel mount breaker specific to the Radian Load Center's panel. But any 30 amp dual pole breaker that fits your critical loads panel will do the trick. So we include it because it's another low cost option, and what we've seen from the dozens of AC coupling sites and counting that are already operating in the field is most installers tend to connect their grid tie inverter inside the load center, especially on 1 or 2 inverter systems. When you get into larger stack systems, and we've seen systems up to 6 Radians so far, looking at some potential sites for more than that, but 6 is a safe bet for now. Then you might want to consider, combining them in a different panel using generic breakers that aren't specific to our load center. But we'll include this in these kits because these kits are really targeted towards single or maybe double grid tie inverter systems. So folks that have, 6 kilowatts of grid tie inverters, or maybe 10, 11 kilowatts grid tie inverters, and they want to do 2 Radians. Which brings us to a quick point I should make, which is that we recommend sizing the Radian at least 25% larger than the grid tie inverter. So generally that would mean with a 8 kilowatt Radian, you probably want up to 6 kilowatts of grid tie inverter connected to it, and with a 4 kilowatt Radian, you'd want 3 kilowatts of grid tie inverter connected to that. So if you have more than 3 or 6 kilowatts of grid tie inverter, then you can stack the Radians. You get an 8 and a 4 for 12 kilowatts, which would accept, you know, 9 or so kilowatts of grid tie inverter. So that should cover most standard residential applications. And then if you need to go bigger than that, you can stack up to 6 Radians as of right now is our recommended maximum until we see some long-term operation on larger systems than that. So we're getting a couple questions. Fred and Guka asked about AC coupling for 240 volt 50 hertz AC coupling. Fred, let me get back to you on that. As of right now, the Radian will not support that, but I'm not sure if there would be an easy way to comply with that. So I'll follow up with you on that. We have another question here. My client wants to go to grid tied, but off-grid capable. So the backed up loads will be the entire electrical service. If your client wants all of their loads backed up, that's, you know, so the entire building, the entire house backed up, you'll just need to make sure that the system is large enough to handle that. So you'll need to make sure that, you know, through your load analysis, if I'm understanding this question correctly, you need to make sure that your load analysis accounts for surge loads and everything in the building, and then size the Radians appropriately based on that analysis. And if she still wants, or he still wants to export to the grid, you would basically have your backed up load center isolated from the grid via the Radian's output. And then you would have the Radian would output to probably just, you know, if there's already another main panel in place, you could use that and put a breaker on there. But it's going to have to be the output of the Radian to the grid won't have any loads on it, but it will still need an overcurrent protection device to comply with the interconnection code and a disconnect. So short answer is you'll just need to do, you know, be careful with your load analysis, make sure that the system is sized appropriately, and then put all of the loads, being, you know, all the backed up loads, meaning all of the loads on the backed up loads panel. So that'll be isolated from the grid, and then the grid interconnection will just be an overcurrent protection device effectively. Adam, if I'll make sure to send my contact information to everybody on this call at the end with a recording of the webinar. So if you have follow-up questions, you know, feel free to send those to me directly after the webinar. We do have one more question here. How does the Radian enable use of existing grid-tied inverters when grid is not available? So without going to the diagrams, basically when the grid goes down, the Radian will use a nominal amount of energy from the batteries to form a grid, to form a fake grid from the grid-tied inverter's perspective. So the grid-tied inverter will sense the 60 hertz split phase output from the Radian, and it will see that as a utility grid, keeping it online. So when the power goes out, there will be a generally unnoticeable transfer time where the grid-tied inverter will not even shut off. The grid-tied inverter will stay on throughout the power outage. Say the sun goes down, and the Radian, and there isn't enough PV to power the loads, the Radian will be discharging from the battery to power the loads. But fortunately, during the day, that grid-tied inverter, say it's a SMA or whatever, the Radian will be able to use the AC output from that grid-tied inverter to keep the batteries fully charged. So if you're out of your house, the grid goes down, your grid-tied inverter will continue to charge your batteries so that when you get back and it's nighttime and the grid is still off, your batteries will have a full charge from a sunny day to keep your lights on at nighttime while the grid, you know, while the power is still out. So this is the case in a, you know, say it's a 3-day scheduled power outage. Every day when the sun comes back out, your grid-tied inverters will continue to charge your batteries throughout the day, which is great. All right, we're getting a lot of questions here. Let me pop this out. So always good to get lots of questions. How does one handle SERC credits via a Radian? Yeah, so that's the renewable energy credits that require revenue grade monitoring. Jason, I think it depends on your market. Generally, from what I understand, that's going to require like a revenue grade monitor, like an e-gauge. But I'll follow up on that one as well. I'll try to get in touch with you about what market you're in and see what our sales teams recommends. They're gonna have a little bit more insight on that since they tend to deal more directly with, our regional sales guys will have more insight on the regional SERC requirements, but I think we can make that work with a AC coupled system as well. So I'll find out. Next question here is, what are the application notes? Yeah, possibly an old one. So this is about the GSLC 175-AC 12240. And without getting too much into the history of that product, basically it was a hardware-based AC coupling solution. And that would only support one Radian because it was based on what we call a blackout relay. So what that did is it used a piece of hardware to sense when the battery was fully charged, and when that battery was fully charged, it would just do a hard cutoff of the grid tie inverter. So you couldn't daisy chain that. The new solution is completely different. To be super clear, it's all firmware based. So there's no relay component. That what we're doing is we're slowly shifting. And Rex, make sure to check out. Let me point you to a link, Rex, if you're looking at my screen here. The AC coupling app note is going to be the best resource. It's not too many pages long. It's a quick read and it's well written. So this will explain really well what frequency shifting is. But essentially, we're slowly shifting the frequency up from 60 hertz to about 64.5 hertz, and across that range, the grid tied inverters, UL 1741SA inverters, are going to slowly reduce their total wattage output. So they're gonna feather back, or they're gonna dither back their AC output all the way down to zero, based on the battery's charging. So the Radian looks at the battery voltage and the endance, and it says, okay, this battery is fully charged. Start shifting that frequency up. So you still get all of your cycles. You still get your absorb cycle and your float cycles, and you keep those batteries in good shape using that frequency shifting capacity. We got another one here. That's a great question. This is basically asking whether the Mate 3 and the older Radians, so our legacy products that we no longer produce, are going to be AC coupling firmware compatible. The answer is probably not. I don't think we will be able to go back and do that because, we don't even have more than a couple of those units here in the lab to test with anymore. We stopped producing those many years ago, so I wouldn't expect so. For folks that have those installed with the older hardware-based relay kits, we are thinking about doing some sort of program where if you have an older version, we might be offering like a trade-up credit for Mate 3S or something like that. But in general, the older legacy Radian and legacy Mate 3 will not support the firmware-based AC coupling, unfortunately. So I'm still looking through these questions. And yeah, so there's a response here, which is basically I don't need to rewire a portion of my array to 60 volts or so. That's exactly the case. So that's the nice thing about this, is you can use that standard 600 volt or even 1,000 volt if you have a 1,000 volt string inverter. I know some people are using 1,000 volt string inverters already. It doesn't matter with the array voltages anymore because that grid tie inverter is the gateway between the array and the Radian, and it totally isolates it. And then your backed up loads are isolated from the grid on the Radian's AC output. So yeah, that's really, it's definitely a big advancement over using the older hardware-based solution. It's a major update. So when the Radian is in so the Radian operates at all of its standard modes. Nothing about the Radian's operation really changes with this AC coupling firmware installed and activated. So if you tie in your grid tie inverter, say, and the batteries are fully charged, it's sunny out, you don't have any loads going, you have 0 loads, batteries are charged, every watt of energy coming out of that grid tied inverter is going to go straight through your net meter to the grid. So you're going to be making money on all of the watts you produce during the day, and the Radian will pass that through at 0% loss. It's just acting like a wire. So it's just going to pass through the conductors, straight through the Radian to the grid. No efficiency loss. There's no back-to-back conversion there, which is also nice for customers that are concerned about, hey, if I put this in here, are my net metering credits going to disappear all of a sudden? Where's all of this energy going to go? Any excess energy that's not keeping the battery charged goes straight to the grid. Last question here, the most recent question, since we are out of time, so this will probably be the last question. Is the 30 amp the max grid tied inverter output? No, it's not, but it's the most probable because on a 6 kilowatt inverter, a 30 amp is the correct OCPD. Now, to be transparent, the breaker, in this case, that 30 amp breaker isn't really acting as an OCPD. It's actually just acting as a disconnect so that you can isolate the grid tied inverter for service or what have you. The real OCPD is still going to be at the interconnection points and the load centers. But it's nice to have that sort of added comfort. This breaker is sized properly for the output of a 6 kilowatt, say a 6 kilowatt inverter. So if something were to happen, we wouldn't even have to wait for the breaker on the load center on the panels to activate. That 30 amp breaker will trip right away, and your grid tie inverter will be isolated immediately. So we're putting the 30 amp breaker in there because that's the the expected size, but it's not the maximum. Just the maximum is basically we don't recommend, and we have beta sites with inverters that are rated at higher, that more than 75% of the Radian. But as you start to push up towards that limit, what will happen is the grid tie inverter can start to control the frequency on the common conductors, and so we definitely, going up to 100% introduces some issues there. So you want to stay around that 75% of the Radian size. And we are out of time. I will make sure that anybody's questions that I didn't address are addressed, and we'll share. I'll do my best to share sort of the most insightful questions here and answers with everybody that was able to attend today. And you'll also get a recording in the next couple hours, but we'll send out a recording of the webinar, so you can review the questions verbally, on the video. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and make sure to visit the website. Again, it's under Products, AC Coupling Bundles, and here you'll find the flyer and the app note and the AC Coupling flyer in general, and the list of products that come with these. The sales team also is ready to answer any questions about pricing and availability. These bundles are available to ship immediately. So generally from your distributor, but all of this is in production and shipping currently. So it's all ready to go. Once again, thanks for joining, and everybody have a great day.